My alien housekeeper got me pregnant. Now I must face her warrior father. The Awakening. Scott Damon's eyes snapped open to a pressure on his chest. His first groggy thought was that the house's climate control had failed again, leaving him pinned by one of the heavy insulation blankets. But then he inhaled, and the scent wasn't fabric or static dry plastic. It was warm, alive. The early sunlight filtering through his window carved soft golden bars across the bed. Within that glow, sprawled across his bare torso, was the unmistakable outline of a woman, or rather something close to a woman. Her skin shimmered with a faint lavender sheen, not the pale hues of any human. Her smooth bald head, crowned with a delicate glowing crest, rose and fell with the rhythm of her breathing. Scott froze, his mind raced through every possible explanation. Break-in kidnapping hallucination. Then memory slammed into him. His new housekeeper, the alien he had hired just last week from the Interstellar Domestic Services Agency. Holier, he whispered, too stunned to move. Liana stirred at the sound, sapphire eyes fluttering open. For an endless heartbeat, they simply stared at each other. He the stunned human employer, she the alien housekeeper, draped across him in all too human nudity. The moment cracked when she gasped, crest flushing a deeper violet. With liquid grace she rolled off him and perched at the edge of the bed. Despite her composure, Scott could read embarrassment in every line of her posture. By the stars, Mr. Damon, she exclaimed, voice musical yet strained. I must apologize. This is entirely my fault. I should have explained my people's customs when I accepted the position. Scott scrambled upright, tugging the bedsheet around his waist. Yeah, I think an explanation would be good. A really good one. Liana folded her hands on her knees, speaking as if rehearsing from a manual. My people, the Atherian, are communal sleepers. We conserve energy and build trust by sharing body heat. After finishing my evening duties, I noticed your resting form. Instincts took over. Her crest rippled, betraying what might have been shame. I should have realized humans might interpret this differently. You think? Scott rubbed his forehead. His soldier's discipline told him to focus on her face, but his very human instincts kept dragging his eyes to the way the sunlight danced across her alien curves. Liana tilted her head, studying him with almost clinical fascination. Though I must say, your physiological response suggests that humans might combine warmth with other intentions. Scott felt his face burn. Jesus, Liana, you can't just, boundaries. We need some serious boundaries. Of course, she agreed readily. Only then did she seem to notice her unclothed state. With practiced elegance, she rose, retrieved the folded uniform from a nearby chair, and slipped into it with fluid movements that somehow did nothing to reduce the tension in the room. Scott swallowed hard. He thought hiring an alien housekeeper would mean spotless rooms and experimental cooking, not whatever this was. By the time he staggered into the kitchen, 20 minutes later, properly dressed in weekend casuals, he was determined to re-establish some normalcy. But the sight that met him derailed that plan instantly. Liana moved around his kitchen like she had always belonged there. Her uniform hugged her form as she flipped pancakes with precision. The domestic scene was so ordinary, it felt surreal, like waking up from one dream into another. I hope you enjoy blueberries, she said without turning, her voice calm again. Your dietary profile indicated a preference. I located some in your stasis unit, a refrigerator. Scott blinked. You read my dietary profile? Of course. The agency provided extensive documentation about your preferences. She slid a plate of golden pancakes toward him. Though it failed to mention humans' aversion to communal sleeping arrangements. Scott snorted, despite himself dropping onto a stool. Probably because humans don't typically share beds with strangers. He cut into a pancake, took one bite and froze. Holy! These are amazing. Her crest flushed violet, a sign he was learning to recognize as pride. I am glad. I've been studying human cuisine extensively. Then she leaned against the counter, sapphire eyes fixed on him. Though I must admit, my interest in human culture extends far beyond food. Scott nearly choked on his coffee. Define far beyond. Liana's crest rippled in amusement. For instance, I find human mating rituals fascinating, the signals, the tension. Quite unlike the directness of my people. He set his fork down carefully. Okay, look, you're stunning, gorgeous even, but we need to keep this professional. Professional, she repeated, rolling the alien word across her tongue. Interesting. Especially since my contract includes a clause permitting romantic relationships between employer and employee. Page 47, subsection C. Scott stared. Then he laughed. You memorized the whole contract. Would that not be expected? She asked, crest tilting in what looked suspiciously like playful innocence. Scott dropped his face into his hands. What the hell had he gotten himself into? The first week passed in a blur of awkward near misses, cultural misunderstandings, and more moments of accidental intimacy than Scott cared to admit. Liana reorganized his clothing storage, according to Atherian efficiency standards, meaning he came home to find his entire underwear collection sorted and displayed like military equipment. She insisted on picnics in the garden to test human bonding rituals, complete with checkered blanket and woven basket. And through it all, she was relentlessly direct. Where humans used subtle glances, Liana asked outright. Where humans danced around attraction, she catalogued his responses with scientific glee. Scott should have been mortified, should have drawn a line. Instead, every day with her made him laugh, made him feel alive in a way he hadn't since leaving the military. By the end of the week, he realized something that terrified him more than waking up with an alien sprawled across his chest. He didn't want her to stop. The boundaries of attraction. Scott Damon had been through firefights, shipboard emergencies, and more than one drunken brawl during his years of military service. None of that prepared him for the ongoing campaign in his own home operation personal space. No matter how many times he tried to set rules, Liana seemed to bend them with alien innocence. Or maybe it wasn't innocence at all. Maybe it was her culture's terrifyingly direct way of testing limits. Morning encounter number 17. Mr. Damon. Her voice chimed from the laundry room. Do you prefer briefs or boxers for combat mobility? Scott nearly spat out his coffee. What the hell kind of question is that? Liana appeared in the doorway holding 3 neatly folded pairs of underwear. Crest, rippling with professional pride, she said, I've reorganized your garments by structural category. Yet your physiological spike in stress suggests I may have breached another human boundary. Scott pinched the bridge of his nose. Liana, humans, we don't discuss our underwear during breakfast. Her head tilted. Fascinating. So garments that protect vital areas are taboo. They're not taboo, they're just private. Ah. She set the stack down. Another cultural mystery solved. Scott groaned. I need more coffee. The picnic proposal. That afternoon, while Scott tried to bury himself in paperwork at his home office, Liana appeared again, this time empty-handed, but with an expression that sent a chill down his spine. She'd learned how to smile. I believe she began we should revisit human courtship rituals. Scott shot her a look. We're not. Your heart rate just increased, she interrupted smoothly, crest perking with curiosity. Is it because I said courtship? Or because you assume I intend to disrobe again? Scott coughed. Neither. Both. I don't know. Liana, can we not? I have prepared lunch. She ignored his protests with the serene confidence of someone who had already calculated his response. According to my research, human mating rituals often involve shared meals. Therefore, I have arranged what humans call a picnic. Scott blinked. A picnic? Yes, she gestured toward the back garden. Please accompany me. Garden transformation. Stepping outside, Scott froze. His modest backyard had been transformed into a scene from a romantic holodrama. A checkered blanket, a wicker basket, plates of carefully arranged finger foods. Even a bottle of wine glimmered in the sunlight. You raided my storage unit, he muttered. I repurposed underutilized assets, she corrected, kneeling gracefully on the blanket. Besides, I wished to test your preference for fusion cuisine. He sat gingerly beside her, trying not to notice how the afternoon light made her lavender skin shimmer, like living amethyst. Fusion. I combined earth peppers with Atherian grain cakes. Humans appreciate novelty, do they not? Scott picked one up, suspicious. This won't melt my tongue, will it? Unlikely. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, though it may accelerate your pulse. He took a bite. Heat blossomed across his tongue, but instead of painful, it was delicious. His eyes widened. Holy, that's good. Her crest flushed violet. I am pleased. Uncomfortable honesty. They ate in silence for a moment. Scott allowed himself to relax, enjoying the absurd normalcy of it. Until Liana leaned closer. Observation, she said softly. You watch me when you think I am not looking. Scott nearly choked on his wine. That's not. It is flattering, she continued, crest rippling, in what he now recognized as amusement. And reciprocal. I find myself fascinated by you. Scott set his glass down carefully. Liana, this isn't professional. Professionalism is a human construct, she countered. Among the Atheria bonds form where instinct leads. Why resist what is natural? Because humans complicate things, Scott said. We make rules, boundaries. And yet, she murmured, reaching out to adjust his collar with delicate fingers, your body betrays you. Elevated heart rate, dilated pupils, attraction. Scott caught her hand, meaning to push it away, but instead found himself holding it. This is complicated, he whispered. Only because humans make it so. Her eyes locked onto his, impossibly bright. My instincts tell me there is connection here. Yours say the same. Do not fight them. For one terrifyingly perfect moment, the world narrowed to her touch, her eyes, her warmth. Then Scott leaned back, breaking the spell. We need to slow down. Liana tilted her head. Very well. I calculated a 73.8% probability you would say that. You ran the odds on me. Of course, she smiled. You are remarkably predictable, Scott Damon, and wonderfully human. That is why I find you irresistible. Foreshadow. That night, as Scott lay awake staring at the ceiling, he tried to convince himself he'd won a small victory. He'd resisted, set boundaries, kept things professional. So why did it feel like Liana had let him retreat? On her terms. And why deep down was he starting to wonder what would happen if he stopped resisting altogether? Ritual of shared essence. Scott Damon had faced many ambushes in his life, but none quite like walking into his own living room late one night and finding it transformed into what looked like a glowing alien temple. The furniture had been pushed back. Candles, no, not candles. Some kind of hovering bioluminescent orbs floated in the air, casting soft lavender light across the walls. In the center of the carpet, a circle of powder glimmered faintly like crushed gemstones, sprinkled under starlight. Liana stood within it barefoot, wearing a garment Scott had never seen before. A robe of diaphanous fabric clung to her curves, drifting like mist with every motion. Her crest glowed softly, almost pulsing with the rhythm of her heartbeat. Scott froze. Okay, either you redecorated, or I just walked into the wrong house. Her blue eyes found his calm but intense. Neither. You walked into a ritual. The proposal. Scott crossed his arms. Care to explain before I call the agency and ask for a manual? Liana's lips curved slightly. It is called the ritual of shared essence. Among my people, it is a way of deepening bonds, establishing connection. Scott's soldier instincts kicked in. What kind of connection? Emotional, empathic, spiritual. She paused, her voice dropping. And sometimes more. Scott swallowed hard. Liana. You need not fear, she said gently. The ritual is voluntary. But since you continue to struggle with human boundaries, I thought experiencing my people's way might give clarity. Will you join me? The preparation. Scott hesitated. Every survival instinct screamed bad idea. But the way she looked at him, open and trusting, disarmed his defenses. Against his better judgment, he stepped into the circle. Liana's crest brightened. Sit. He lowered himself cross-legged across from her. She lifted a small vial and tipped it, sprinkling glowing powder across his bare chest. It tingled instantly cool, then warm as if tiny sparks were crawling over his skin. This powder represents the intertwining of life forces, she explained, tracing patterns with delicate fingers. Intricate swirls formed under her touch, glowing faintly. Scott tried to stay still, but goosebumps betrayed him. You're really thorough. Her lips twitched. Precision is important. She leaned closer, her breath feathering across his collarbone as she drew another line. And fascinating. Your body responds so vividly. Scott forced a laugh. You're turning me into a damn canvas. Into a bond, she corrected. The connection. When the designs were complete, Liana sat behind him, guiding him to lean back against her. Her warmth pressed along his spine. Now we breathe together. Inhale, exhale. Scott matched her rhythm reluctantly. At first it felt awkward, until he realized he could feel her breath as if it were his own. Then came something stranger. A wave of sensation that wasn't his washed over him. Joy, affection, desire, not his feelings, hers. Whoa, he muttered. The powder enhances natural empathy, Liana whispered. Soon you will sense me as clearly as I sense you. And he did. Every thrum of her heartbeat, every flicker of her emotions, her amusement when his pulse quickened, her wonder at his resilience, her fierce affection, sharp enough to take his breath away. Scott's voice cracked. This is unreal. No, she murmured against his ear. This is real. More real than words or rules. Breaking the boundary. He turned his head, finding her face inches from his. Her crest pulsed with emotion, her eyes luminous in the dim light. What do you feel? She asked softly. Scott swallowed. Everything. You want me. You care. You. He shook his head. You fascinate me. And you feel the same, she finished for him. Her lips so close, he could taste the warmth of her breath. Scott's soldier's discipline wavered. For days he had fought to maintain boundaries. Now, in this circle of light, with her emotions bleeding into his own, those boundaries crumbled. He kissed her. It was like touching fire and starlight at once. The powder flared, leaving trails of light where their bodies met. Through the empathic bond, every sensation doubled his pleasure, feeding hers, hers feeding his, a feedback loop that threatened to consume them both. The aftermath. Hours later, tangled in sheets, dusted with glowing powder, Scott stared at the ceiling in disbelief. Liana lay curled against him, tracing patterns on his chest with lazy fingers. I should inform you, she said matter-of-factly, though her crest shimmered with emotion that Atheria-human compatibility extends beyond the spiritual. We are biologically compatible. Scott raised an eyebrow. You mean? Yes. She met his gaze squarely, though a flicker of nervous excitement betrayed her. It is possible. Cross-species reproduction. Documented, though rare. Scott sat up. You're saying I might have just... Yes, her voice softened. We may have just begun a new life together. Scott rubbed his face. I hired a housekeeper, not a co-parent. Liana's smile was radiant. Life rarely matches expectations. Sometimes it exceeds them. Scott groaned, flopping back down. What have I gotten myself into? The family emergency. The word pregnancy had been circling Scott's brain for hours, refusing to land. Every time he looked at Liana's radiant crest, glowing faintly, hand drifting protectively across her still flat stomach, his thoughts looped back to the same stunned refrain. She's carrying my child. Not possible. Shouldn't be possible. And yet, according to the alien medical hologram hovering in his living room, it was not only possible but happening at terrifying speed. Doctor's verdict. Dr. Saren, a tall, steel-skinned Atherian physician with a massive crest lined in silver, tapped the readout with academic enthusiasm. Perfectly healthy hybrid gestation. Accelerated timeline, of course. 6 Earth weeks until full term. Scott nearly toppled out of his chair. 6 weeks, that's humans take 9 months. Wasteful Dr. Terrence sniffed. Atherian biology streamlines the process. Once compatibility is confirmed, efficiency is paramount. Truly remarkable. You, sir, are participating in a medical milestone. Scott groaned. I feel less like a milestone and more like I just stepped into an alien soap opera. Liana squeezed his hand, crest glowing with maternal pride. Beloved, this is wonderful news. Our bond has created new life. Scott stared at her, heart pounding. Beloved, our bond, our child. His life had spiraled from 0 to hyperspace in a week. Incoming transmission. Before he could fully process it, the house AI chimed, voice crisp. Incoming priority communication from the Atherian Central Network. Tag family emergency. Liana's crest flared bright violet. Oh stars, that will be my parents. Scott blanched. Your wait. What do you mean your parents? The holographic display shifted, resolving into 2 alien faces. A regal female with iridescent pearl crests, and a stern male with lavender tones matching Liana's own. Their clothing glittered with ceremonial embroidery, their eyes sharp with authority. Daughter, the woman exclaimed. Our family's genetic monitors just registered a cross-species conception alert. We are en route to Earth at once for the traditional blessing ceremony. Liana's composure faltered. Mother, father, what a surprise. We weren't expecting. Nonsense, her father boomed, his crest rippling like a storm. The first blood blessing must be performed before the 3rd phase of gestation. We arrive in approximately 8 Earth hours. I trust your human mate is prepared for the trials. The revelation. Scott's mouth went dry. Trials, what trials? Liana winced. I may have neglected to mention certain traditions. Her mother's eyes narrowed. He has not been informed. Daughter, the ritual of ancestral combat is no trivial matter. Combat, Scott barked. Why is the word combat involved in meeting my in-laws? To prove worthiness, her father said gravely. To join our ancient bloodlines, a mate must demonstrate strength, honor, and devotion. Ritual combat, the ceremony of molecular harmony, the oath of genetic continuity. Hold up, Scott said, waving frantically. I'm just a guy from Earth who hired a housekeeper. I didn't sign up for whatever interstellar ninja warrior trials you've got planned. Liana touched his arm, crest glowing apologetically. Beloved, I should have explained. It is only symbolic. Usually, parents' ultimatum. Her father leaned forward. Human, our family's honor demands tradition. You will face me in ceremonial combat. Should you prevail, or at least survive, you will be recognized as kin. Scott's jaw dropped. And if I don't? Her mother's smile was unnervingly sweet. Then we will find another father for our grandchild. Scott choked. Another? You can't just… But the transmission cut off, leaving silence heavy in the room. The crash course. Scott turned slowly to Liana, eyes wide. You knew about this. Her crest shimmered guiltily. I may have hoped they wouldn't insist. But they are traditionalists. Traditionalists. They want me to fight your dad with a sword. Energy blade, she corrected softly. Ceremonial, only mild cellular disruption. Mild. Dr. Atherian cleared his throat. Utterly unhelpful. Actually, given the hybrid pregnancy, I recommend limiting the disruption to non-lethal levels. But fascinating. This will be the first case study of cross-species paternal trials during accelerated gestation. I must prepare a paper. Dr. Scott snapped, not helping. Liana knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. Scott, my love, I know this is overwhelming, but these traditions matter. They prove to my family that you are strong enough to protect our child. Scott stared at her, his fear softening in the face of her unwavering gaze. And what if I fail? Her crest glowed fiercely. Then we will leave together. I will not abandon you no matter what the ancient codes demand. Scott's chest tightened. She meant it. He could feel it through their bond. He exhaled slowly. Well, guess I'd better start practicing with an energy blade. Training montage disaster edition. The next hours were chaos. Liana attempted to teach him basic Atherian stances, which looked suspiciously like yoga poses, crossed with martial arts katas. Left foot exactly 3 degrees off-center, she instructed, demonstrating with effortless grace. Scott wobbled, nearly face-planting. 3 degrees, I don't even own a protractor. Focus. Dr. Atherian hovered in the background, occasionally interrupting. Fascinating. His bioelectric field resonates with the Atherian energy matrix. With proper synchronization, his odds of survival increase from 42 to nearly 60%. 60, Scott shouted. 75, Liana corrected quickly, crest flickering. At least, my father hasn't seriously injured a candidate in 3 cycles. Scott groaned. That's not comforting. The arrival. As Scott struggled to remember the 17 different bowing gestures, the house AI chimed again. Vessel detected in Earth orbit. Atherian registry confirmed. Estimated landing in 15 minutes. Scott froze. 15 minutes. They said 8 hours. Liana winced. I may have forgotten to mention that Atherian ships utilize temporal compression during family emergencies. Scott's voice rose an octave. Temporal compression. You mean time travel? Not exactly. More like selective acceleration through space-time. Perfectly safe. Scott dragged a hand down his face. Safe for who? As if mocking him, the sky above their house shimmered. A sleek silver vessel descended, glowing with chronometric energy. Its shadow fell across the yard like a promise of doom. Scott straightened, heart hammering. He tightened his grip on the borrowed energy blade Liana had thrust into his hand. Well, he muttered, time to meet the in-laws. Liana squeezed his fingers. Her voice was soft, fierce. No matter what happens, remember this, I love you. Our son loves you. We are family now, regardless of tradition. Scott looked at her, at the life they had created, at the impossible path that had led him here. Then he nodded. Let's do this. The trial of ancestral combat. The ceremonial arena aboard the Atherian vessel looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, casting shifting shadows across the circular chamber. Runes glowed faintly underfoot, and above a domed ceiling shimmered like a sky full of trapped stars. Scott Damon stood at the center, sweat prickling beneath the borrowed combat tunic Liana had thrust onto him. In his right hand, an energy blade hummed to life, its violet glow vibrating through his arm. Across from him, High Counselor Thex, the father-in-law-to-be, ignited his own blade. His crest rippled with anticipation, eyes sharp as flint. Ready yourself, Earthson, Thex, intoned voice booming in the alien acoustics. The trial of ancestral combat begins now. The first clash. Scott swallowed hard. Just to clarify, this is symbolic, right? Symbolism without struggle is meaningless. Thex replied and lunged. The elder Atherian moved with startling speed for someone his age, blade arcing in a glowing crescent. Scott barely brought his own weapon up in time, sparks cascading as the two blades met with a thunderous crackle. "Holy!" Scott yelped, staggering backward. "You didn't say anything about fireworks. Focus!" Liana's voice rang out from the observation platform, her crest flickering with nervous energy. "Trust the bond, Scott. The bond awakens." Scott gritted his teeth, trying to mimic the stances Liana had drilled into him. His footing slipped, then suddenly steadied. He realized he'd anticipated Thex's next move before it came. Through the empathic bond with Liana, he could sense echoes of the Elder's intent. A subtle weight in his chest warned him of a strike. A flutter in his pulse guided his defense. Thex's eyes narrowed as Scott parried a complex pattern he should never have recognized. "Interesting," the Elder muttered, pressing harder. "You have bonded deeply enough to share her battle sense. Most impressive for a human." Scott grunted, deflecting another blow. "Guess your daughter has a way of surprising people." From the stands, Lady Mira the mother sniffed loudly. "His stance is all wrong. Are we sure he's worthy of our bloodline?" Mother Liana snapped, crest flaring. "You said the same during your trials." "That was different." Lady Mira huffed. Scott nearly laughed despite himself. Even in alien cultures, in-laws are in-laws. Human adaptability. Thex struck again, each blow ringing with energy. Scott ducked, rolled, countered clumsily but with stubborn persistence. "You lack grace," Thex observed, circling. "But you compensate with unpredictability. A human trait, perhaps. Call it improvisation." Scott shot back, panting. "Humans are good at that." He lunged suddenly, feinting left, then spun right. His blade grazed Thex's shoulder, drawing a ripple of bioluminescent sparks. The crowd of Atherian witnesses gasped. Thex's crest flared. "Well struck." Scott straightened, chest heaving. "Thanks. Learned it in a bar fight on Titan Station." Liana groaned. "Beloved, maybe don't tell him that right now." The disruption. Just as Scott braced for the next exchange, a sharp cry rang out from the platform. Liana doubled over, clutching her stomach, crest blazing with uncontrollable light. "By the stars," she gasped, voice breaking. "Scott, it's starting." Scott's eyes went wide. "What's starting?" Dr. Terran leaned over his instruments, eyes alight with scientific glee. "Fascinating. The emotional intensity of the combat trial has accelerated the gestation process. She's entering final labor 3 weeks early." Scott's blade nearly slipped from his hands. "Now, you've got to be kidding me." Liana cried out again, collapsing to her knees. Scott bolted toward her, but Thex's blade intercepted, humming inches from his chest. "Combat is not yet complete," the Elder intoned grimly. Scott's temper flared. "Are you insane? Your daughter's giving birth." Thex hesitated, crest flickering. Lady Mira gasped. "The timing is impossible unless..." Dr. Terran clapped his hands. "Yes, there is one precedent. The ritual of unified creation. Rare, ancient, nearly forgotten. The energy of combat channeled into supporting the birth process." Scott gawked. "You people really can't do anything the normal way, can you?" The shift. Thex lowered his blade slowly, eyes blazing with new resolve. "Then let us finish the trial as tradition demands through unity." He deactivated his weapon and gestured. "Human, take your place beside her." Scott didn't hesitate. He dropped to Liana's side, cradling her trembling form. Her eyes, though filled with pain, locked on his with fierce love. "Scott, our son is coming." He gripped her hand tightly. "Then let's bring him into this world together." The unified combat birth. The arena transformed into chaos and harmony all at once. Thex and Mera ignited their blades again this time, forming a triangle of shimmering energy around Liana and Scott. "Channel your strength," Thex instructed. "Focus it into her." Scott, barely understanding, mirrored their stance. His bond with Liana pulsed, carrying waves of her pain, her determination, her overwhelming love. The energy field surged. Liana screamed, but through the bond, Scott felt not only her agony, but her fierce will. He poured every ounce of himself into her, holding, guiding, protecting. Dr. Theron's voice cut through the light and noise. Remarkable! The hybrid child responds to both human bioelectricity and Atherian energy patterns. Synchronization at 98%. Less commentary, more delivery, Scott shouted. Liana's crest blazed brighter than ever, her whole body trembling as she pushed. Scott's heart thundered in rhythm with hers, their breaths locked in unison. He could feel their son's consciousness, small, bright, alive, pressing toward the world. Climax. One final surge of light exploded through the chamber. The energy matrix pulsed in harmony with Liana's cry, and then silence. A thin wail pierced the air. Scott's breath caught as Dr. Theron lifted a tiny form swaddled in glowing cloth. Healthy, perfect, the first human Atherian hybrid. Thex deactivated his blade crest, shimmering with awe. By the ancient stars, he is beautiful. Lady Mera, eyes glistening, whispered, a true heir, a blend of both worlds. Scott, tears blurring his vision, cradled the newborn, as Liana sagged against him, exhausted but radiant. We did it, he whispered. Her smile was weak but brilliant. Yeah, we did. The unified birth ritual. The arena glowed like the inside of a living star. Runes along the walls flared brighter with every contraction that racked Liana's body. Scott knelt beside her, sweat pouring down his back, his hand locked around hers in a desperate grip. Across from them, High Counselor Thex and Lady Mera formed the other points of the glowing triangle. Their ceremonial energy blades thrummed in resonant strands of violet light, weaving into a lattice that enclosed the family. Dr. Theron hovered at the periphery crest, rippling with manic scientific joy. Yes, yes, the resonance field is perfect. Human bioelectricity amplifying Atherian patterns. Synchronization at 99%. Scott barked through clenched teeth. Doctor, shut up and tell me what to do. Breathe with her. Channel your strength into the bond. The bond deepens. Scott focused on Liana, on the glowing lines of pain etched across her lavender skin, on the desperate determination shining in her sapphire eyes. Through the empathic link, he felt everything: her agony, her fear, but also her fierce love for him and their unborn child. I'm here, he whispered, forehead pressed against hers. You're not alone. We'll do this together. Her crest flared, pulse syncing with his heartbeat. Together, her mind whispered into his. The energy field responded. Light cascaded around them, shimmering like auroras, each pulse aligned with their unified breath. Labor of fire and light. Liana's body arched as another contraction ripped through her. Scott gritted his teeth, feeling the echo of it in his own muscles. God, how are you still breathing through this? Because our son deserves my strength, she panted. Scott tightened his grip, pouring his will into her through the bond. Take my strength then. Take everything. The lattice of energy blazed, runes flaring like miniature suns. Even Thex faltered, his blade wavering. Incredible, the elder muttered. The human channels not only emotion but raw willpower. Lady Mera's stern face softened awe, replacing skepticism. Perhaps he is worthy. The birth. The moment came in a flood of sensation. Liana screamed, her crest exploding with light so bright it bathed the entire arena in violet brilliance. Scott roared with her, their voices merging into one primal cry. Between them, the lattice funneled their combined energy inward. Dr. Theron shouted over the rising hum, now one final push. Liana bore down, every fiber of her being straining. Scott anchored her, his entire soul locked into hers. and then with a flash of blinding radiance, their son entered the world. His cry rang out not just sound, but resonance vibrating through the chamber like a chord struck on the strings of creation itself. The first hybrid, Dr. Terran caught the newborn in glowing cloth, his hands trembling despite his clinical detachment. By the stars, he whispered, crest quivering with awe. A perfectly healthy hybrid. Scott barely heard him. His vision tunneled on the tiny form's skin, pale ivory kissed with lavender undertones, a faint shimmer along his scalp, where delicate crest lines had already begun to form. But it was the eyes that shattered Scott's composure. Human-shaped, yes, but glowing with the piercing blue of Liana's race. Eyes that locked on him immediately as though recognizing him. Scott's throat closed. He's perfect. Liana exhausted, but radiant, reached out trembling arms. Scott helped her cradle their son, tears streaming freely down both their faces. Alexander, she whispered. Defender of humanity, that is his name. Scott swallowed hard, heart swelling, until it felt like it might burst. Alexander Damon, Alexander of Two Worlds. Recognition. High Counselor Thex stepped forward, deactivating his blade. He loomed over them, his massive crest shimmering with solemn reverence. For a moment, Scott braced for rejection, for the inevitable disapproval of a father watching his daughter forge an impossible path. Instead, Thex placed a heavy hand on Scott's shoulder. You have proven yourself, Earth son, not only in combat, but in devotion. You stood with her through the greatest trial of all. You are family now. Lady Mira approached, eyes shining. She traced a finger gently over the infant's crest. The perfect blend, she murmured. The dawn of a new bloodline. Scott exhaled shakily. Acceptance. Against all odds, he had won it. HFY moment. Dr. Terran, meanwhile, was practically vibrating with excitement. Do you realize what this means? The hybrid genome expresses both Atherian empathic pathways and human adaptive resilience. This child is not only viable, he represents the future of interspecies evolution. Scott shot him a glare. Doctor, we're having a family moment here. The physician blinked, crest dimming. Of course. Scott looked back at Liana and Alexander, laughter breaking through his tears. When I hired a housekeeper, I never imagined it would lead to this. Liana smiled weakly, crest glowing with warmth. Life rarely matches our expectations, beloved. Sometimes it exceeds them. New bloodline. The arena moments before echoing with the clash of blades and the cries of labor now pulsed with quiet reverence. The lattice of energy faded, leaving only the bioluminescent glow of the walls, softer now like a heartbeat at rest. Scott sat on the cool floor. Liana leaned against him, their newborn son nestled between them. Alexander's tiny breaths seemed to sync with the ambient rhythm of the chamber. Every sound, every flicker of light seemed to honor his arrival. The first look. High Counselor Thex stepped closer, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the family. Scott tensed instinctively until the elder knelt. The energy blade master, the stern patriarch of an ancient bloodline, bent on one knee. His massive hand brushed lightly over the infant's crest. The first of his kind, Thex said softly, voice stripped of authority and filled instead with awe. My grandson, a warrior born of two worlds. Scott's chest tightened. He hadn't realized until that moment how much he needed this man's acceptance. Lady Mira moved beside her husband, regal and sharp as ever, but her eyes softened at the sight of the child. Look at his patterns, she whispered. Not purely Atherian, not purely human, unique, unrepeatable, a bloodline no one can deny. Liana's exhausted face lit with maternal pride. He carries both of us. That is his strength. Naming the child. Dr. Terran, never one to let a historical moment go unanalyzed, fumbled with his instruments. Traditionally, the hybrid would require dual names, an Earth designation, and an Atherian lineage name. I propose a detailed genetica. Scott shot him a glare. Doctor, later. Liana touched Scott's cheek, her eyes soft. Alexander, she repeated. It means defender of humanity, does it not? It honors your people, your language. Scott swallowed the lump in his throat. Yeah, it's perfect. Tex nodded approvingly. Strong, fitting. Yet, among our people, he will also need an Atherian name for ceremony. We shall call him Seitharian, meaning child of blended light. Lady Mera traced the baby's cheek. Alexander Seitharion Damon, defender of humanity, heir of Atheria. The words echoed in the chamber like a proclamation. Scientific frenzy. Dr. Terran finally found his voice again, crest shimmering with manic glee. Do you comprehend the implications? His genetic structure integrates Atherian empathic pathways with human adaptive resilience. His neural crest already shows advanced resonance potential. He could surpass both species. Scott groaned. Doctor, can you stop turning my kid into a science project for 5 minutes? Impossible, the physician muttered, scribbling into his hollow slate. But noted. Liana chuckled weakly. Let him fuss. His papers will keep the galaxy occupied for years. In-law recognition. Tex turned his gaze back to Scott. Earth son. When first I heard of this union, I doubted. I feared weakness. But today you stood in combat against me. You endured the trials. And you stood with my daughter as she brought new life into our bloodline. He extended his arm in the traditional Atherian warrior's clasp. You are no longer outsider. You are kin. Scott hesitated, then grasped the elder's forearm. Their grips locked firm and resolute. For the first time since this insanity began, Scott felt like he wasn't fighting against the current. He was part of it. Lady Mera added with a rare smile. You will still need to complete the ceremony of molecular harmony and the oath of genetic continuity. But perhaps we can postpone those until the child sleeps. Scott laughed shakily. Thanks. Really appreciate the breather. Reflection. Later, after the arena had cleared and ceremonial duties were delayed for family bonding, Scott found himself alone with Liana and Alexander in a quiet chamber of the vessel. The baby stirred, tiny hands curling against his father's chest. Scott gazed down at him, stunned all over again. My son, half human, half Atherian, whole miracle. He looked at Liana, her head resting on his shoulder, eyes half-lidded, but glowing with joy. When you first showed up in my bed, I thought my life was over. Turns out it was just beginning. She smiled sleepily. You feared me, you resisted me, and still, here we are. Scott kissed her forehead. Here we are, making history. HFY core. Outside the chamber, the ship carried word of the event across secure Atherian channels. News that the human had not only survived the trials, but fathered a viable hybrid, would ripple through the galaxy. Debates, outrage, admiration. It didn't matter. The fact existed. The future had been born. Scott didn't care about politics, not tonight. He cared about the weight of his son in his arms, the warmth of the alien woman who had turned his world upside down. He whispered more to himself than anyone else. Humans don't just survive. We adapt. We belong. And sometimes, we change the galaxy forever. Epilogue. The Defender of Humanity. The silver Atherian vessel drifted high above Earth, orbiting silently, its bioluminescent hull gleaming against the velvet dark. Inside, in a quiet chamber far removed from the ceremonial arena, Scott Damon lay awake. Liana slept beside him, her lavender skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Alexander curled between them in a cradle of warm fabric. The newborn hybrid's tiny crest shimmered faintly with every breath, casting ripples of soft blue across the chamber. Scott had faced battles, endured losses, and shouldered burdens heavier than most. But nothing had ever felt like this, holding life so fragile, so miraculous, yet so full of promise. A father's reflection. He traced a gentle finger across Alexander's cheek. The baby stirred, little hands curling around Scott's finger with surprising strength. "You've got my grip," Scott whispered, smiling despite the tears threatening his eyes. "Guess you'll need it. The galaxy's not going to make this easy on you, kid." Liana stirred, opening her sapphire eyes. "He will not need it alone. He will have us." Scott turned to her, unable to stop the grin that spread across his face. "You realize how insane this is, right? 1 month ago, I was worried about paying bills. Now I'm preparing to raise the most important child in interstellar history." Her crest pulsed softly. "History is merely the story of those who dared. You dared." Scott chuckled. "Pretty sure you dared first, jumping into my bed like that." Liana smirked faintly, eyes closing again. "Instinct. The universe rewards those who trust instinct." Acceptance. The door slid open quietly. Thex and Mira entered, their imposing figures, softened by something Scott never thought he'd see in them: tenderness. Mira bent over the cradle, tracing a finger over Alexander's crest. Already his patterns are changing, blending. He will be a symbol not just of our family, but of what our peoples can be. Scott sat up slightly. "That's what worries me. I don't want him to be just a symbol. I want him to be a kid, to grow up laughing, learning, falling, screwing up just like anyone else." Thex regarded him silently, then placed a hand on Scott's shoulder. "Earth-son, you speak like a father. That is enough. The rest will follow." For once, Scott didn't argue. He simply nodded. Dr. Terran's last word. From the corner, Dr. Terran's crest pulsed as he scribbled notes into his hollow slate. Fascinating. Early bonding already evident. The human paternal instinct is extraordinary. Combined with Atherian empathic pathways, the child's development may. Scott shot him a look. "Doctor, not now." The physician sighed, crest dimming. "Understood, but truly remarkable." The promise. Later, as dawn broke across Earth below, Scott carried Alexander to the viewing deck. The planet glowed beneath them, blue and green, swirled with white clouds. For the first time, Scott felt the weight of everything: the child in his arms, the alien family at his side, the galaxy watching. Liana joined him, slipping an arm around his waist. Together they stood in silence, watching the sunrise from orbit. Scott whispered, "I used to think humanity's place out here was fragile, that we were just one small species trying to survive among giants." But looking at him, he looked down at Alexander, who blinked up with impossibly blue eyes. "I realize we're not just surviving, we're shaping the future." Liana leaned her head against his shoulder. "He will be our defender, of humanity, of Atheria, of all that comes after." Scott smiled, fierce and proud. "Yeah, Alexander Damon, the first of many. The proof that humans don't just belong in the stars, we thrive there." HFY declaration. Thex and Mera joined them, standing tall, their crests glowing in quiet solidarity. Even Dr. Terran hovered nearby for one, silent, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Scott lifted his sun high, letting the first rays of sunlight catch the tiny hybrid crest. His voice rang out steady and strong. "Let it be known, humanity doesn't just endure. We don't just adapt. We forge bonds, we build families, we change the galaxy. My son, our son, is the living proof. A bridge between worlds. The future belongs to us all." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with reverence, with hope, with the hum of something new beginning. Liana's hand found his, their fingers interlacing. Alexander cooed softly, the sound small yet somehow echoing across the chamber like a promise. And in that moment, Scott Damon knew the galaxy would never be the same.